on the phone line, I invited my friend Rainier Zitelmann, who is one of the world's best economic historians, and who has got a great new book that I just found to be fascinating called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. A great book about what's happening all over the world. Rainier, thanks so much for joining. I think you're in Germany?
Yes, I'm in Berlin right now.
Oh, well, it's awesome to have you. I love your book. It is such an important discovery of what's happening in the world, who's getting it right, who's getting it wrong. So, Rainier, let me first ask you, because you sent me an article the other day, and you write about this in your book about what's going on in Vietnam. And you, according to this article you sent me, Vietnam is moving towards Trumpism.
Yes, maybe this is a little bit exaggerated, but there's more than a kernel of truth. You know, they call themselves communists, and
yes.
They call their country socialist. But this is crazy. You know, I've been there several times. I was invited to universities, and it's much easier to find a Marxist at the university in the United States or in Europe than in Vietnam, because
wow.
They know what socialism means. And, you know, the story with Vietnam is this. In the beginning of the 90s, Vietnam was the poorest country in the world. You know, first they had the war not only with the United States,
yes.
They were in war with France, with Japan, with China. And what was not destroyed by the war was destroyed then by the planned economy that they introduced. So they were really the poorest country in the world, poorer than all African countries in the beginning of the 90s. Then they started with free market reforms. They introduced private property. They called it Doi Moi reforms. And the result is that the number of people living in poverty in Vietnam decreased from 80% to 3%. And
wow. No, wait. So hold on, Rainier. Is that in Vietnam?
In Vietnam.
Wow, that's amazing.
The number of people
that's incredible.
living in poverty reduced from 83%. So and now
wow.
I want to add something what is very, very important. You know, I think you work also for the Heritage Foundation.
Yes,
and,
that's right.
And they have every year this Index of Economic Freedom. I think the next one will be published,
yes.
I think, next
yes.
month or in a few weeks.
That's right.
So,
yep.
And I studied this Index of Economic Freedom, and I compare always what happened over a longer period. You know, you started in 1995, and if you compare 1995 to today, there's no country with comparable size that gained so much scores in the Index of Economic Freedom as Vietnam. I'll give you one comparison. Wow. The United States lost 6 points since 1995.
Yes.
Vietnam gained 21 points. 21 points. The only other big country that gained as many points is Poland. And so I wrote this book about Poland and Vietnam. Yes, Poland and Vietnam are the two countries that gained most. And I think this proves that economic freedom is the only way to reduce poverty. So first,
my gosh.
I spoke about Vietnam, but let me mention also Poland.
Well, hold on. Time out, Rainier, because this is such an important message. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, because you've got this important book that no one else has ever looked at, all this data from all over the world. The book, again, is called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. And if you want to understand how to create economic prosperity, this is a great book to explain it. And what Rainier is telling us is that it's amazing, actually, when you think about it, that Vietnam and was it Hungary or Poland? Poland. So these are two countries that were communist, and they were, dirt poor, and they have since then moved from socialism to economic freedom and free market capitalism. And they have had, if I understand you correctly, the fastest rate of growth and the biggest reduction in poverty, because they moved towards economic freedom. And economic freedom, just so people understand what, because I've read the book, I think it's fantastic. That means low tax rates, cutting government spending and control over the economy, reducing regulations, sound money, free trade. All of these things create wealth, and they make even the poorest people richer. Is that right?
Absolutely. This is correct to repeat it because it's so unbelievable. The number of people living in poverty in Vietnam was reduced from 80% to 3%. This is what happened. And, of course, it's not full capitalism, but there's nowhere in the world full capitalism. In the United States, it's not a full capitalism. You have a lot of socialism also, and we in Europe also. It's a mixed system between capitalism and socialism as almost everywhere in the world. But what the important thing is, what you have to look at, and what I do as an historian, I compare it with a test tube with two ingredients, market and state, capitalism and socialism. And then you watch what happens if you add more market or what happens if you add more state. And this is exactly what happened in Vietnam. They added more market, and now they want to go on. This is the news. Bloomberg had it last week. In Bloomberg, they had this headline that they follow now Elon Musk and Javier Milei. Maybe it's exaggerated, but they understood in Vietnam that the only way to go forward is reducing the role of the government. And why is this important? I've been not only several times in Vietnam, but also in China. And in China, we had also a very good development starting in the beginning of the 80s with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms.
Right.
This is. I have a friend at the Beijing University, and people in the West, they don't understand what happens there in China. He told me always, our success was not because of the state, but in spite of the state. They reduced, the role of the government and introduced private property and free market. The bad thing, what happened in China, since Xi Jinping is there, in the last 10 years, they go back now to more government and less market. This is the problem. But if you compare Vietnam and China, for example, China now has officially a growth rate of 5% last year. Vietnam has more than 7%. So I hope that in Vietnam that they will not make the same mistake as China did, because this is what happens. This is what my book is about.
Got it. So, Rainier, we are a show called More Money, where we try to make money for our listeners, and a lot of them are investors. So here's what I want to ask you in our remaining minutes. And by the way, the name of Rainier's book is called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. Let me just ask you one before I get to what countries to invest in. I want to tell you that we had an item in our hotline that we put out every day, where we noted this week that Germany's economy is in a lot of trouble. It's going the wrong way. They've had 2 years of negative growth, and I don't understand. And by the way, I think Angela Merkel was one of the worst chancellors of Germany ever. And why is Germany going in the way of socialism?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It started with Angela Merkel, and you see what happens. She restructured our energy industry in the direction of a planned economy. For example, to phase out nuclear power plants. So this is crazy because, the official policy in Germany is that climate change should have absolute priority. But if you believe in all this stuff with climate change, you should have, of course, more nuclear power plants and not less. They phased out nuclear power plants, or another thing, they forbid fracking, and now they import LNG fracking gas from the United States, what is, of course, great for the United States, but ridiculous for Germany to forbid it and then to import. And they import also electricity from dirty coal power plants from East European countries. And now what they did, the next thing, they call it for our automotive industry, they ban now in the European Union the combustion engines, so that in the future it will be only allowed to drive with electric vehicles. And I said it some years before, if you do this, it's an attack on the heart of the German economy, because we were always proud about our Mercedes, BMW, and Volkswagen, and now they destroy it. There are 10,000 of people who are that they have to fire from this big German automotive industries because it's all idolatry driven. And no, this is the lesson. The Germans are so crazy. They wanted to be role models for the world. They want to show, oh, we are the champions in climate change, and we shown out the rest of the world how to do it. But now we are not role models, only in negative sense, as a warning for every other country what you shouldn't do.
Yes, what you shouldn't do. Okay, so we just got a few minutes remaining, Rainier, and I appreciate your calling in from Germany to tell us about what's going on all over the world. So I want your advice, and my listeners would love your advice about give me 3 or 4 countries, if you would, that you think are headed in the right direction and that are moving towards economic freedom where people should invest in.
Of course, first, Argentina.
Argentina, yes. So Milei is doing all the right things, right, in Argentina.
I'm proud because I was there 2020, 22, 23, 24. I was there every year. I studied the Milei movement from the beginning. Yes. I think I was the first one who said here in Europe he can win, and it's amazing what he did. And I had some friends who invested there in the last year, and they made a lot of money. They invested especially in banks. I think it's great what he does. Of course, we have here the leftist media who tell us that there is increasing poverty. Yes, in the beginning, poverty increased. This is always if you do free market reform.
Okay. All right. So it's Argentina. I get it. We like Argentina. We love Argentina. Give me 1 or 2 other countries where you think you're very bullish on.
Think about Vietnam. I mentioned this. Think about Vietnam. I would say also Poland, but the problem with Poland is they go in a good direction, but Poland is linked very close to Germany. And if we got problems,
that's a problem.
We have problems. This is so. I would think about Argentina and Vietnam.
Okay. Hey, Rainier, thanks so much. I would love to have you on again because you're teaching us a lot as investors of where to steer clear of and where to put your money. And Vietnam, Poland sounds good. And of course, Argentina, all 3 of those countries moving in the right direction. Let's have you on in another couple of weeks and let us know of the developments. Germany, I'm not high on Germany. I don't think you are either. Same with China. That is Rainier Zitelmann. His book is The Origins of Wealth and Poverty. Thanks so much, Rainier.